Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Papier-Bernstein. I'm a speech language pathologist. I am a retired speech supervisor, New York City Department of Education, District 75. I've been adjunct associate professor at Lehman College CUNY for 33 years, and I'm also vice president of the New York State Speech Language Hearing Association, Nysslha. And I would like to talk with you for a few minutes about your state association. If you're a current member of Nysslha, thank you for your continued support. And if you're not a current member, this is really a great time to think about joining your state association. We represent the interests of over 18,000 licensed speech language pathologists and audiologists in New York State, and we do this by promoting best practices, professional development, and most important, legislative advocacy. So while it's true that we've continued to represent and support the professional interests of members and non-members alike, it's also true at this point in time that we really need your membership support in order to continue to do that. Although membership in our national association, which of course is ASHA, has steadily increased, this really reflects increases in the numbers of professionals entering the field. But over the last 15 years, the membership in our state association has steadily declined. Our staff development events and the Nysslha convention have continued to attract excellent and timely topics for presentation, but the attendance numbers at conventions and continuing ed meetings have also declined, and there are many reasons for this. When we have asked our downstate, as opposed to upstate, professionals why they are not members of Nysslha, the answer is usually the same. They tell us that they do not believe that state membership will provide for them any additional benefits that they do not already receive from their other professional memberships or educational affiliations. So let me take a minute of your time to provide the big picture of how Nysslha works on your behalf and why your membership is vital for ensuring the sustenance of our professions along with the protection of our unique scopes of practice. We have a lobbyist, Shawneen McNally, and she works side by side with Nysslha, and she's part of the New York lobbyist firm of Reed, McNally, and Savage. And she works with Nysslha to develop and communicate the right messages to the right legislative representatives at the right time to get the results that safeguard our profession. Their efforts include direct lobbying, coalition building, grassroots advocacy, and public relations of all types. For example, the Nysslha Board of Directors and the Governmental Affairs Committee travel to Albany several times a year to attend the legislative meetings that are scheduled by our lobbyists and with governmental policy makers. And it's at those meetings that Nyssla's position on specific bills, along with researched, detailed documentation about the bills, is presented to our counselors. And the legislators need to know what's important to their constituents, and we encourage our membership to communicate their support or opposition of specific legislative proposals that are emailed to members as what we call Nyssla's action alerts. Nysslha, in addition, works very closely with the New York State Education Department, or NYSSID, including the Board of Regents, the Office of the Professions that oversees the speech language pathology and audiology licenses, and the Office of Teaching Initiatives that oversees our TSSLD and TSHH certifications. And together, We partner through ongoing phone conferences and meetings to discuss areas of mutual concern. We also work in partnership with ASHA's state liaison, and together we develop the pros and cons of upcoming legislative bills that can either benefit or really infringe upon our specific scope of practice. And we're really able to benefit from ASHA's big picture knowledge of state trends, state hot topics, state model bills, state advocacy, and all of the resources that they offer to the state associations. And we actually get a heads up from our liaison regarding bills that are surfacing in other states that may be coming around to New York. So we support the national initiatives and they support ours. And ASHA really considers Nysslha to be a very proactive state association. And as a result, our state liaison is available to us for ongoing consultation via email and phone conferences. So we have a 2018 advocacy agenda, and that summarizes all of the areas that Nysslha has been tracking, as well as our positions related to specific bills. And there is a link in the written report of what I'm talking to you about that if you wanted to, you could access the entire report. But the question is, where would we be without such advocacy and lobbying activities that take place within our state association? Well, this is pretty serious, because what might happen without us is that our scopes of practice could be threatened. Billing and reimbursement might become more restrictive, and limits might be imposed on our continuing education options and possibilities. So I'd like to provide you with some very concrete examples of how these very issues can impact the work that you do. First of all, there's something called highest qualified provider, or HQP. And in today's world of ever-expanding special interest groups and the overlap of professional roles, it becomes imperative to protect the interests of those we serve and the future of our professions. Those of us who are licensed as speech-language pathologists and audiologists in any setting do not want other professions infringing upon our scope of practice. Nysslha strongly believes that it is critical that speech-language therapy and audiology services be provided by those who have the academic and experiential background, in addition to the clinical expertise, all of which is necessary to appropriately address the medical, educational, and developmental needs of individuals who require speech and language or audiological assessment and intervention. And this assures the customers and the receivers of our services that they will have access to the provision of the highest quality of professionals who are appropriately licensed by the state of New York. So I want to give you some very concrete examples of how HQP, or highest qualified provision, is being threatened. First, it is of concern to us that a few states have begun to implement programs to credential SLP support personnel such as aides or assistants. Because we believe that services should only be provided by HQPs, Nysslha, along with NISID, will not support any such legislation in New York. But there are special interest groups that have attempted to push this through, as they want to push through their own agendas. So we continue to be the watchdogs for professional concerns such as this, and this is a big one. Another example of how HQP is being threatened, and this is all very, very recent, and it concerns legislature regarding licensed music therapists. So they were previously entitled creative arts therapists, and they had a very clearly defined scope of practice. But with this change of title comes some concern about a new scope of practice for them that has been proposed, with areas that completely intersect our own areas of practice, within our scope of practice. So while Nysslha supports the intent of the legislation, we have made our position clear that only licensed speech-language pathologists and audiologists should be authorized to diagnose and treat communication disorders. And I have yet a third example, which relates to recent legislation of possible infringement, and it's something called a new service called Coaching and Communication Supports for Post-Secondary Education and Employment. And this is intended for individuals with significant disabilities to obtain and retain employment. All a fabulous thing. We're totally in support of this. However, there are areas within what they're proposing to do that infringe upon our scope of practice. And we, again, have stated our position and our concerns to the various legislative bodies. A second area that we have been extremely involved with is limited licensure for speech-language pathologists. And this is a new law very recently on the books that allows clinical fellows, meaning those who are engaged in clinical practice under the supervision of a licensed SLP, it allows them to participate in the Medicare reimbursement program, which impacts ease of billing and reimbursement. And New York was one of only 7 states that did not have this limited license category. And when Nysslha brought that to our attention, we worked with the state licensure board to draft, introduce, and ultimately get the bill passed. And that's something that we're really very proud about being involved with. And a third area that directly impacts you is called CTLE, or Continuing Teacher and Leader Education Requirements. Now, this is something that you all have to abide by. The New York Office of Teaching Initiatives adopted new registration and CTLE requirements in 2016. Every few years, it has to be renewed. And at that time, Nysslha members notified us that ASHA CEUs were no longer being accepted for CTLE continuing education, as ASHA was not considered a sponsor under these new requirements. Well, ASHA staff reached out to us, and they reached out to us, to Nysslha, to work with NISID, the Board of Regents, and to help ensure that state members have various options for relevant and discipline-specific continuing ed course content. And in March of that year, next year, 2017, we received a message from the Board of Regents indicating that they have reviewed the matter and determined that if an organization is an ASHA-approved CE provider, such as District 75 is, by the way, that the state education department will accept their courses and their programs as meeting CTLE requirements. So this was huge. It was a huge accomplishment and a really clear example of how and why Nysslha, your state association, must work in concert with the state education department and American Speech Language Hearing Association to protect our disciplines and to ensure the interests of its membership. So, in conclusion, we are reaching out for your help. Please go to our website and encourage others to do the same. When you go to nysshla.org, and all of these links are on the paper document that I hope is going to be posted for you, check out what Nysslha has been doing for you and why you should join. There's a document that states that. And please, there's information on our fall workshop, September 22nd at Teachers College. Please plan on attending if you can. Plan on networking with your colleagues at our convention in Albany, May 2nd through May 4th. And most importantly, please encourage others to join our association. We have a link for the application, the online application, and we actually currently have a recruitment incentive going on with a $20 Nysslha Buck referral for every member who recruits a new member. It's 20 Nysslha bucks for each. So remember, together we can do this. Nysslha rocks. Thank you.